had to no, you're good. I've kind of had to adapt to this type of flexibility mindset. My second biggest takeaway that I encourage all of you to use is condense the checklist. Occasionally, as a more controlling person, you will have checklists for every task that you do, and your agenda might have 20 tasks on your to-do list. We really have to condense those, and that is something that I've done this year a lot, and it makes it more effective. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, we had to read that for one of our classes that we took, and I loved that book. And they Stephen Covey, I believe that was the book that we read, but he talked about the quadrants and the urgence and the importance quadrant, and I really do apply that every day. What is urgent? What is important? What do I need to get done? I also apply the 1-3-5 rule. So I don't know if you guys have heard of this before, but it kind of breaks it down: 1 large task a day, 3 medium-sized tasks, and then 5 small tasks. That only leaves you with 9 tasks a day, and it's very doable and manageable. And this leads to taking care of yourself. I found myself as a first-year teacher so overwhelmed, and even now as a second-year teacher, I'm still overwhelmed, but I've learned to manage my time and respect myself and take care of myself more, going home at an appropriate time and taking my lunch breaks, not eating through working through my lunch breaks. Those are just a few things that I really encourage you guys to think about and do. And then I also have some blogs and Instagrams that I could have listed like 15, but I narrowed it down to 4, the top 4. The designer teacher, she is a RSP teacher. She has a great blog and a TPT. I've followed a lot of her center building, how to create centers, and I've used a lot of tricks that she uses. Resources from Rachel. She is a special education teacher. I think she is SDC and RSP, but she has great resources on TPT. She also has a blog, but I find a lot of my people I look up to, admirers, I guess you can say, through TPT. So when I'm looking up on TPT, and TPT is Teachers Pay Teachers, if you didn't know, but whenever I'm looking up anything on that website, I come across special education teachers and I end up following them, getting their blog, Instagram, etc. So resources from Rachel, I use like all of her assessments. She has a year-long K through 8 reading, writing, and math assessments, and I use them. I used them my first year and I use them this year. They are so easy to use and I love them. The Instagrams, I have the Ed Queen. I follow a ton of special education teachers and RSP teachers, and you should too, because they give you great ideas. The Ed Queen, she has like a lot of followers, but she responds to DMs. So you can message her. I've messaged her so many times and she will reply with advice, and it's awesome because it does take her a few days, but she gives great advice. She's a behavior specialist, so she does more so the behavior side, but again, she replies and she's wonderful. And then Charlie's Classroom, this is like my big RSP inspo. A lot of the things that she's done in her classroom, I've kind of copied. But those are just some 4 that I've seen. And I will go on to the next one. So where to begin with RSP? So this is kind of like before the school year starts, and kind of like Dr. Rowe was saying, you're reviewing IEPs. A lot of times you won't have the IEPs. You don't know who's returning from the previous year, or you might not have access to all the IEPs that you're going to have this school year. But the ones that you do have access to, you should be reviewing. You should obviously know the goals, and then you can start strategizing how you would potentially pair them up into groups. One of the biggest things that I've learned from the first year was training my IAs. There's a big, discussion about IAs and whether they may be older than us or the respect level. And I think setting those standards at the beginning of the year is so important. They get their own IA, instructional aid, paraprofessional training, but doing your own training is so important because you need to run your classroom the way that you want to run it. So I have taken time out of weeks and before the school year, and I do consistent training with my IAs to make sure they are facilitating independence, basically. Prior to the school year, you're also obviously organizing your classroom to make it functional. You are creating a procedure. So my thing from last year and this year, I created a procedure and I wanted to change it throughout the school year. I think the biggest thing is just stick to the procedure that you're doing, even for a semester long. So if you're doing the colored groups, don't change too much throughout the year. Little things you can change, but really stick to a procedure. Maybe like winter break, you can change your procedures a little bit, but I think your main procedure, classroom procedure, should be set in stone for the school year. And you could change and tweak little things throughout the year. So this includes stations. Where do you want your stations to be? Colors, getting all of the supplies that you're going to need, bins, resources, colored folders, etc. Incentives, think about what you're going to do as a reward. Incentives, you want to think about your resources. Do you have enough? Do you have enough manipulatives? Where are you going to keep them? How are you going to label them? All of the stuff that you would do to prep a classroom before the school year. And then also you want to make sure you have all your curriculum ready, prepped, and you're aware of where it is, where it's going to be located, and easily accessible to your instructional aides as well as assessments. You will then, what I've done is create temporary schedules. As Dr. Rose said, the first 2 weeks you're really figuring out where your students are at. So you have these temporary schedules with these fluid groups right now for the first couple of weeks until you're able to find out where your students are at. Biggest thing with multi-level grade RSP teaching, I'm K through 6, so I have 7 different grades. It's a lot. I am not organizing them by grades. I'm organizing them by levels and what areas they need to work on, goals, academic levels, etc. So I think that's a really important thing to note. So once you begin your school year, you are doing the pre-work. So I have 3 slides of the pre-work. That's just kind of what I labeled it as. You are first forming groups. So it is very important that you form your groups before scheduling. And I made this mistake last year. I created a schedule and then I tried to put students inside the schedule with the groups, and it didn't work out. You need to form your groups before you schedule so that you know what you need to schedule or how many groups you need, and then you're scheduling. So that's the best way to do it. Again, you're grouping on goal areas. And then for myself, which I didn't include a picture, but I do have a pocket chart of my everyday daily schedule posted in my classroom, and it's color coordinated. It states if the students are working individually or in the small group. So my schedule, when I have 2 stations going on at the same time. I have an individual station and then I have a small group station. The individual station is not necessarily independent. They are with an instructional aide. Sometimes it's just one-on-one. Sometimes it might be 2 students working independently. Maybe one's working on a test that they didn't take, but that is the independent station. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But it is a rotating schedule just based on what they need and what their IEP says. Some IEPs state that they can only, or that they are working in small groups. Some IEPs state one-on-one services. So that's also something to take into consideration. So my groups, I ended up grouping mine in 6 different groups. So I have purple through blue, and then they're kind of leveled out based off of what I assessed and observed the first few weeks of school. My purple group only gets ELA, and then the rest of them get ELA and math. My yellow group, I have it italicized because they are my largest group and they're also my longest service group. So they're like my highest need group. A lot of these students actually came from an SDC setting. So they are still kind of adapting to the RSP pull out, push in, co-teaching. Some of them have one-on-ones. So they get a little more of my, I don't want to say more of my attention, but they do take a little bit more of my attention. But so those are my leveled groups, and color coordinating is everything. It's very helpful. Okay, so after you are creating your groups, you are then able to schedule. So considering the following when you're planning a schedule, and like Dr. Rose said, scheduling can be a nightmare, and a lot of times it won't ever be finalized. There will always be tweaks. This is like the longest time of the year planning schedules because it's very challenging. But there's a lot of things that you want to consider. You want to consider what students would want, or what students would benefit from pull-out services versus push-in services, co-teaching. So my school, we call it pull-out, push-in. A lot of other schools may call it like co-teaching or submerging. It is co-teaching when I'm saying push-in or talking co-teaching. But that's obviously a huge thing to consider. You also are considering who requires the one-on-one support based on their IEP, and whether or not that's going to be one of my aides or an ABA therapist, etc. You also are considering where your SPED IAs would fit best. So with this, I take my first few weeks of school to have my aides work with different level students, and I'm kind of observing. So sitting back and watching them work with kindergartners versus the sixth graders, I can get a sense of, okay, they might work better with the younger students than with the older students. I also let them, tell me their feelings. What are they most comfortable for? Because I want them to be comfortable in their position as well. So once I'm able to get a good grasp of where they work best, I can pair them up a little better. And then you're also looking at the general education schedules. So for me, that would be 7 different grade levels. It's all spread out, and it's a lot. But you want to look at their subjects when they're teaching subjects. You want to consider if we are doing reading support. Do you want to, you have to pull them out. Say, for example, are you going to pull them out during their literature time? Or maybe they should get their literature time, and then we are doing a pre-reading instruction. So there's a lot of things to consider of when it is appropriate to pull out. You don't want to be pulling out during a content-rich subject versus maybe history. And that's when you really want to decide if you're going to be pushing in rather and doing co-teaching. So that's a big thing to look at. And you're also considering OT, speech, other supports and services, and PE, music, art, pep rallies, school assemblies. So you have all of these schedules and considerations, and I lay them all out, and it is quite the mess when I do this at the beginning of the school year. You have a lot of different schedules, but you just begin forming these rough drafts and pairing groups with SPED IAs and myself. And again, as much as you want it to be perfect and work around the general education classes, sometimes it won't work that way. So that's just kind of something that you do have to accept. But you can consistently change it, as it will always change. So that is one of the pre-work. And then once you finally realize where everything fits best, you finalize your schedule. So this is an example of my permanent schedule. This is without services, so I don't have any of my groups inputted, but I just kind of laid it out there. I plan out specific times for grade level planning. So some schools have these plannings after school, and some schools do it during school. We do it during school. A lot of our teachers have their prep time when their students are at PE or music. So I take that time to go into their classroom, and that's considered our prep time together. I plan it out, and I put it on my permanent schedule, so it's always there every week. I know I'm going to 5th grade planning on Mondays at 8:35. I know every single week that's where I'm going to go. I also make sure all of my other meetings are on my template as well. And this weekly schedule is on a clipboard for myself to see every day. So I also have my SPED IA. We have a weekly check-in every Tuesday. It's 20 minutes. It's very brief, but it is something and it works for us. So we do this every Tuesday. We just come in here real quick and we could touch base on things. I think that's very important to make sure you do have a weekly check-in with your SPED IAs. I know mine's only 20 minutes. It could be longer, but it's something. So that's good. I also make sure I put in my prep times and my after school IEP meetings, prep, all of that I make sure is in my schedule too, just for my own knowledge. And of course, my lunchtime, I want to make sure that it's there and clear. And once you are able to finalize your own schedule and your IA schedules, you are working around their schedules and you are to pair it with your groups that you've created. Okay. So you are now able to go about the school year and follow those groups and your IA schedule, your own schedule. But you do have to still meet with the general ed teacher. So again, I meet once a week. And so for planning. So I kind of narrowed it down to 4 steps for the weekly planning step or weekly planning. So the first step in the weekly planning is to meet with the general education teachers. So collaboration is a really large part in RSP. A lot of what we do during pull-out services is mimicking the general education classes. Also for co-teaching, when we're pushing in, we need to know exactly what they're doing, what supports I need to make sure I have ready, and then also what needs to be accommodated and modified. I meet with my general ed teachers once a week for 45 minutes. Like I said, I meet with them Monday through Wednesday. So my last day I meet them is Wednesday. Their lesson plans for our school are actually due on Wednesday, but a lot of them have them already done on Monday for the following week. So I meet 45 minutes, and that's not the only time I see them, but it is scheduled in for 45 minutes. A lot of times I'll meet with them another time as well. During this collaboration, like meeting time, we are doing a bunch of different things. We are planning and prepping for the following week. So I'm looking at their lesson plan and we're going through it together. I'm also doing my own fidelity check. So this is a little template of my own fidelity check. I created this and I just wanted to have something on paper and just keep them accountable as well for what they're doing inside the classroom. So for this fidelity check, I have all the weeks of the school year, and I have the students that are in their classroom and all of their accommodations at the bottom. And when I go in and meet with the general ed teachers, I check to make sure they're doing the accommodations. I check to see if they need help or assistance. This is also a time where we could give each other updates or share concerns, questions, progress, etc. This sheet up here is just my notes template. It's a running doc on Google Google Drive. This is a running doc. I use it every single week, and I just put all of our notes from our meeting right on this Google Doc. And it's also shared with the general ed teachers, so we're both kind of using that. We could input things throughout the week, and I might send one of them a text saying, hey, I just updated the Google Doc, check it. I just wanted to let you know something. It's just kind of our version of consistent communication, and it works really well. So for my general education teachers, I set deadlines, and I set this deadline at the beginning of the school year. So they're very aware of this deadline. Oh, okay. Sorry. So I set deadlines. Oh, I just said that. So I set deadlines. My deadline is on Friday. So all the general education teachers are to give me anything that I need by Friday. And meeting with the general ed teachers Monday through Wednesday, this leaves Thursday and Friday for my planning time. So anything that I need from the general ed teachers, they'll give me by Friday, and I will be able to use them for the following week. So the next step in the weekly planning is the drafting. This step can be the longest step, I find it being, and also some people can say that this step is kind of optional, but I think it's very important. So I have two separate pages that I use. My first page is, this is an example and it looks like a lot, but it is written, it's on paper with pen or pencil, and I'm basically just laying out all the instructions throughout the week for each group. I have a capital G and a capital I that just let me know if it's group or individual. But I created this template. It's very simple and it's not too specific, but it's enough for me to be able to transfer it into the permanent schedules, weekly schedules. My other page is the prep page. So this prep page, I love using this prep page. I categorize it into 3 different columns. So the first column is my own printing. What do I need for each group? My second column is the copies from the general education teachers. Again, they have to give me all the copies by Friday. I do want to note that we share a Google Drive, so some things that I need from the general education teachers, I can print out myself from the Google Drive, but I will still put them in this column, get from general ed teachers, just to remind myself I need to go to the Google Drive to print it out. And then my last column is what needs to be accommodated. So these are just things that I need to adjust. I've actually had a lot of general education teachers start accommodating things on their own for me, or give me a test that's already accommodated, and that's really nice. Just knowing that they're applying these accommodations as well. So yes, and then once this prep page is completed, I cross things off, and this is kind of like my sloppy copy before I finalize it for each week. So then you're able to finalize your plan. This step can be really quick after your draft plans are done. So the drafting plans are going to be a lot longer than your finalizing plans. So you are finalizing your plans. This picture up here, I just wanted to show you, this is an example of an IA's schedule. So this is their like permanent every single week schedule. It generally doesn't change. The only thing that is changing is the instruction that they are teaching for those groups. So this is their permanent schedule, and then I'll show you, this would be their weekly schedule. So the only things that are added are the writing in black. So that looks like a ton of writing, but truly the only things that are added are the instruction. I am not super specific on my IA schedules because I think my instructional aides are very independent, and it's almost because I've trained them to be independent. And of course they have questions, and I try to be specific, but planning every single day for that many grades, it's very hard and it's very time consuming. So you do have to make sure your instructional aides have some independence with planning, not necessarily planning, but coming up with their own ideas if something isn't working. So those are just my examples of the finalized schedules. And
Madeline, I'm sorry,
yeah.
can I interrupt? Because I had a question come to just me in the chat.
Yeah.
And I bet other people are wondering too. But one of our participants really loves these templates that you have. Do you use pay teachers? Do you have a teachers pay teachers? Or would you be willing to share your templates in some way?
Absolutely. I created most of these templates that I've created. I'll just go back a step, but I'm going the wrong way. They are all I've created them, but I will most definitely share them with anybody. I could maybe give you guys a link, or I could put them on my TP. I do have a TPT, so I could put them on my TPT too. But I did create these, so yes, I will share them with you. Okay, so after you finalize your schedules, you are now able to plan your classroom. So you're doing a classroom prep. So you are using that prep page and you are prepping your classroom for the week. This shouldn't take that long. Depending on how much you have to do for that week, but it's not the longest step. Again, I think the draft plans are the longest step. But you are printing new IA note sheets, behavior charts, student schedules. So you're doing a lot of printing. I've learned the most effective way of printing is group by group printing. So I do the blue group, green group, blue, purple group, etc. Everything that I'm printing, I'm putting in my black cart drawers. I have them labeled blue, green, yellow, orange, red, purple. And then I am getting all the copies from the general education teachers, or I'm getting them from our shared drive. I'm printing them, and I'm also placing them in these bins for the following week, unless I need to accommodate them. If there's anything that needs to be accommodated, I have a to be accommodated drawer that I stick everything in for need to accommodate. Obviously, then I'm accommodating things, I'm modifying tests and quizzes, and I'm making sure everything is done by, I try to do it by Friday. Occasionally things push to Monday, but I really try to finish all of my prep by Friday. So I am just showing you guys some of my IA note sheets. So this is the way that my IAs take notes. It is paper and pencil or paper and pen. They write the students, the date, the service, whether they're pull or pushing, and then any type of notes, whether they're collecting data or whether it's a concern, observation, etc. if the student is absent. Those are things that I need to know. If there is nothing much to say, I still make my instructional aides write the student down, and they could just say great service or just make any type of note, but I do want them to write every student down, just so I know that they service them, of course. And this is the ABC data collection. This is for some of our students and some of our instructional aides that collect data on behavior goals or students with behavior. That is generally the ABC data collecting sheet I use. I also have one more sheet that I use, but I consistently use only 2 different ABC. There's so many charts, and I really only use those 2. So these 2 are the main notes or data sheets that I use. I created this note sheet. I, of course, will share it as well. And then once I print enough of those, they go on the IA clipboard. So this is an example of how, it's a pretty blurry picture, but that is an example of kind of how their clipboard would look. Their schedule is on top, which is their weekly schedule, and then there's note sheets underneath. And normally I keep about 5 or 10 note sheets underneath just so they have enough for the week. And then they also have the ABC sheets as well if they need it. These hanging baskets, they are in my classroom. And the bottom is for the clipboard. So those are all their schedules, and also student schedules or behavior schedules. If any student has one of those, all of their clipboards are right there. And then in the second basket is the IA note sheet. So they have all of these copies. If they ever need to replace more or put more on their clipboard, they have them right there. And then this top hanging basket is just school forms in general. So health forms, behavior reflections, office slips, etc. So all of that is very easy for my instructional aides to grab and go. And so with this step 4 weekly planning, I make sure that everything is full. Everyone is ready for the next week, because I think it's really important to make sure everything's stuffed and you don't have to make last minute printing or copies. So this is just an example of accommodating, and I know you guys are probably familiar and have seen so many different versions of accommodating, but my most frequent version, I guess, of accommodating tests and quizzes or even assignments, these are like my ones that I use the most. Minimizing the amount of answers on a ABC, history test, multiple choice test. And then the highlighting, I love highlighting. That's probably another big one that I always use. It's very helpful for my students. And then steps to organizing or to solving in math, I set that up as well. Using color in general is very helpful in special education. But there are so many ideas of accommodating sentence frames, shortening, multiple choice, word bank, helpful clues, larger print, masking, etc. This tip is so helpful for RSP, especially because you might have a larger caseload. I have 27 students, so only having 3 instructional aides, it's enough. I'm good, but sometimes you feel short-staffed, especially during testing. So this tool, it was actually a tip from the Ed Queen from in the Instagram. I actually messaged her because I was really concerned with testing and I couldn't find a time to pull out a few students. I didn't have an IA that would be able to push in because we were doing pull-out services. So I was really stressed on how I could support these students while they're taking their tests inside their classroom. And she gave me the tip to do a voice recording. So I have been using this. So you basically just voice record yourself, reading the whole entire test. And this is for students who need a read aloud accommodation. And this is done on an iPad or a Chromebook or a tablet, whatever your school may have. And they then are able to take the test within the general education class while using earplugs and being read the test. This is probably my biggest accommodation that I've learned and I love so much. It works so well. Yeah, so that's a big suggestion, big tip from me. Okay, so while you're doing this prep, I just kind of wanted to show you guys my groups and my color coordination with my bins. So this is the independent or individual folders. So again, color coordinated purple through blue. And this is kind of what they look like on the inside. A lot of it could be writing, or I mean, it could be a variety of different things. And then this is an example for the red group. And they all have their individual items in there. I do want to note that I do stuff these folders for the whole week. So independent folders are stuffed for the whole week. They have material that they can use for the whole week, whereas the group bins I stuff daily. So I already have them prepped in those black drawers, but I stuff these group bins daily just because they're larger. These group bins, so this is actually a rolling cart as well, but these group bins I've used and I love them. They're very deep and they can hold a lot. So I can put, curriculum in there. I can put a variety of books and materials and manipulatives, and it works really well. They could just slide it out, anybody who's using it, and take it over to their small group table. So that's that. And then, like I said before, my yellow group is my longest group and my largest group. So they actually have a separate bin for their whole group bins that is set out Monday through Friday. So if you did see in the last picture, there is no yellow. So that is why we have our separate yellow over here. So they have their whole group in the Monday through Friday little bins, and then they also have their individual folders as well. So that is kind of a separate thing, but these are set up for the whole week. And then I did want to just show you guys my tables. So this is just a picture of 2 of my small group tables. There's no specific whether the independent station is here or there. We do kind of switch off, but my IAs normally know. We kind of have a set schedule, but it's not specific where independent is always at the pink table and group is always at the blue table, but we're very flexible with that. But yes, these are my small group tables. The horseshoe tables work out really well. These white wheeling carts are so effective for storing materials, whiteboards, pencils, pens. I always have this little blue carrier cart, I don't know what to call that, with a bunch of pencils and materials in there that is accessible. And then I did want to point out these little circle spots that are on the small group tables. They are from Amazon, and they are like whiteboard erasable. So they are so cool. The kids love them. And it also is helpful for spacing. You're able to tell, one student to go to the yellow dot and the other student to go to the purple dot. It works really well. It makes the small group really effective, and the kids love them as well. So that's fun. And then I also, like I said, I have a rectangle table that's in the center of my classroom. It's not pictured, but it is just a normal rectangle table. A lot of times, actually, the independent group goes to the rectangle table. Okay. All right, and these are just some pictures that I wanted to show of my classroom of what works well. These wheeling carts are best for organization. This cart on the left, the black cart, this is mostly all of my stuff. Nobody really goes in these drawers. The top 4 are my assessments. So I have a drawer for each of my assessments, my ongoing assessments. And then the bottom 6, as you saw before, are my groups. So all the plans for the following week. And then this white bin is my IAs really go in these top 4 bins. I have a turn-in test and quiz bin. So any test or quiz that is taken from a student, I actually keep in my classroom. This is also a lesson I've learned. Having a student, if they have to take it in our classroom, bring back the test to their general education teacher. A lot of times it gets lost or it doesn't always make it back to the general education teacher's classroom. So we have decided as a school that I keep all tests and quizzes in my room. And then on Fridays, I pass back, I actually have one of my instructional aides pass back each teacher's tests and quizzes for the week, if that makes sense. So I do keep all of the tests and quizzes here. Turn-in data collection. So all of those data sheets, data note sheets, any ABC data, any type of data in general is all put in this drawer. And then mail to be sent home. I do send home mail on Monday for certain students, so that all goes there. And then to be filed, I have student portfolios. So that is another drawer. That's once I collect the data, I put it in there, and then my aides are able to take it and file it into their portfolios. This is a really cute corner of my classroom. I love this corner. It is a relaxed corner. It's very fun and cute. I also have these fan timers that work really well. They're also from Amazon. I have these charts and references that is right near the couch, and I really like those. And then obviously we have our leveled out books and our fidgets that are labeled. Labeling everything is super effective. And then I have, this is probably one of my favorite walls too. These are my anchor reference charts. I have a math anchor chart, and then I also have an EL anchor chart. These are from, I think they're from Resources by Rachel, but I bought this, and she has so many little anchor charts, reference sheets. I cut them out and I laminated them, and I put them in a pocket chart, and the students are able to come and grab them as they need it. And of course, some students don't go grab it, so I'll grab it for them. Some teachers I saw had an idea of keeping like a pencil box or like a ring for all of the reference charts that a student has, and just keeping it on that ring for that student. As of right now, I just keep them in the charts and we take them as we need them. But I love that chart. And then my reward wall. This was something that I kept going back and forth about. I'm like, I have 6th graders and I also have kindergartners, like what's going to work for everyone. And I finally thought, let me just try the reward jar. It's a little childish, like young, but let me just see if it works out. And surprisingly, my 6th graders are more excited about it than even my kindergartners. So the reward wall does work really well. Once they fill up their jar, they're able to go in the reward bin. And I have in the reward bin, I have a variety of toys or stickers that works for all grades. And they do get these stickers like after a service, depending on, you know, how well they behaved or etc. And then I have clear rules. Of course, these are just the school rules that are school-wide in the class. In the classes, a lot of teachers have their own rules as well. I kind of just stuck to our school rules that we had, and of course added visuals. And then my final classroom organization piece is just a clean work area. I think that's the most important part. If your work area is clean, you will have a good work day. And that is it. That was a lot.
That was awesome. Oh my gosh. Wow. So many great ideas to take away. And I just also want to highlight some of the things that I know Madeline was very humble at the beginning, saying, oh, you know, I'm year two and not an expert, but you obviously know what you're doing. And I'm just thrilled that that you shared all of those great ideas. I think there's a lot of great takeaways. So a couple of other things I want to just draw your attention to, those of you who are in attendance, to take away from this is her organization, being super organized like that, as well as being very collaborative and visible with gen ed teachers, is going to earn you so much respect. So some of the, I guess, problem areas that some RSP teachers can run into is, you know, you'll hear gen ed teachers say, I never see the RSP teacher, or I saw the RSP teacher once, they pull the kids, but I never get, you know, a time to ask questions or collaborate. So I really love how Madeline has that in her schedule every single week to be meeting with every team. That's amazing. Also meeting with the IAs every single week. And also important is scheduling her lunch, making sure that she has time for herself, scheduling the IEPs and prep time. So super organized. And that's the way to go, to be very impactful and to really make sure that you are collaborative and earning the respect of your IAs, of the gen ed teachers. And then they're going to be more willing to give you what you need. So not only does she show up, but she's also setting expectations so that she can do her job and service the students as best as possible, which is setting expectations, needing those materials by Friday and all of that. So really amazing. Thank you so much. Are there any questions from those of you in attendance? You can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
I have some questions. And Madeline, thank you for doing this, because as an RSP teacher, I teach K through 5th, and it's a dual immersion school. So, but I don't have instructional aides. I have 27 kids. I have another special ed teacher with me. But your grouping, I don't know, like, are your groups by grade level? Are they just mixed?
Yeah, they're mixed. So a lot of them end up being with some of their grade, like for example, my red group, there are 3 second graders, but I also have a 3rd grader in that red group. So it is specifically by level. And again, those first few weeks, I'm figuring out reading level, math level, goal area, and that's how I'm organizing it. So some of the groups are specific to all 4th graders, but I really don't think a majority of my groups are mixed. Yeah, many of them are mixed. They're not all one grade.
Because like at my school, each grade level has 2 teachers. They have a Spanish teacher and the language and math. So like they'll have, so they switch classes. So it becomes very complex for me to do scheduling.
Yes.
I have to like group 4th graders with 4th graders, my 5th graders with 5th graders, and they have multiple different goals on their IEP.
Yeah.
So there's no way of like, I have no aides. So
Right.
and like, and I don't have a full classroom either. Like I have a room. So it's just like looking at your area, I was like, it's amazing because I don't have any of that, like,
Yeah.
to help.
I mean, when I began my admin, well, the person who was in charge of me at the very beginning, she's no longer with us with this school, but she was considering that my grouping would be by grade. I really did push for it not being by grade because it would not be effective. Because you're right, they do work on different skills. You can't just group them based off of their grade level. We need to be grouping them based off of what area they need to work on. So I would just push for that and advocate for your kids. And I know with scheduling, it's a nightmare, but it is really important and it does make it so much more smoother.
So you use the teacher's curriculum for your lessons, or are you creating your own lessons for these?
I use the teacher's curriculum, but I do a lot of self-made And then I find things from TPT as well. But a lot of it's basically from their curriculum, just very explicit. And I might, expand a lesson and find other resources from TPT to add on to it, but it is their curriculum. Yeah.
It's like a lot of the students aren't even at grade level to even work on the stuff that are in the classroom. So that makes it hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's challenging. And so you might have to be using a second grade math book for someone who's, or just working on that specific skill, not even from the curriculum.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I have put in the chat a survey. If you would please, pretty please, go and take that survey. And again, this was multi-grade level planning and RSP. They'll ask you for the title with Madeline Clark and Dr. Rao. And also I wanted to go ahead and announce our next webinar is going to be on March 19th. That's another Saturday, same time, 9 to 10. That one we are going to talk about, that's going to be with Diana Rejon, another master's student and practicing teacher. And she's a preschool teacher, early childhood. She's going to talk about transitions, classroom transitions, and fostering independence during classroom transitions for preschool. So that would be really relevant, of course, for early childhood, but also if you are teaching or you're thinking of teaching kindergarten level, TK, kinder, first grade, that can be really, I think, relevant to that as well. So thank you again so much for joining us. And we'll stay on a couple more minutes if there's any final last questions.